The history of Freemasonry is murky at best. Texts referencing the order date back to the 1300s, but no one knows exactly who founded it or why. If you asked a Freemason, they would say that they are there to serve the community, to build up moral codes. A valiant goal, one might agree, but it does beg the question, why does such a universally approved mission require a secret society? The Freemasons have always kept their traditions and ultimate goals close to the chest, despite the fact that members of the secret group have risen to powerful positions throughout history and around the world. One notable example is their intense involvement in the founding of the United States. 2 of the 5 drafters of the Declaration of Independence, 40% of American generals during the Revolutionary War, and 30% of the signers of the US Constitution, including George Washington himself, were all openly Freemasons. Why were so many members of this secret society invested in the founding of this strange new republic? Probably, the truth lies in the ideals of their order, meaning Freemasons tended to champion democracy and equality. And there were also just enough Masons in the world that of course some prominent Americans would belong to the order. But what if that wasn't the whole story? What if the Freemasons had their own agenda in fighting for the United States and setting it on its path? What if they had created fail-safe measures to ensure that the United States maintained its Masonic ideals? It's 1776, and George Washington knows he has won the Revolutionary War. The British have not surrendered yet, but they will. It's just a matter of time. Now he must plan for the future. He wants the United States to be a real democracy, where white men of any economic background can vote and take office, and where ideas can be discussed freely. He wants the country to fully embody Freemasonic values. So, he decides to build a failsafe that he can use to drastically alter the course of the country if things start to go terribly wrong. He calls in his chief lieutenant, Alexander Hamilton, explains what he wants, and asks if it can be done. Hamilton, ever resourceful, solemnly nods, and together the 2 of them get to work. What many don't know is that Hamilton himself is a Freemason, though his affiliation has been kept secret to allow him to navigate circles of influence outside the order. Together, Washington and Hamilton get to work. In 1790, the foundation of their plan is set. Washington and Hamilton have the entire government on board with the idea of building a completely new capital city. It is to be beautifully done, a masterpiece of ingenuity. Washington hires Pierre-Charles L'Enfant to build the capital city. He is French, an excellent architect, and just so happens to also be a Freemason. L'Enfant creates a layout unlike anything the world has seen, with wide avenues and grand promenades meant to draw attention to the city's beauty above ground, to match the patterns of the stars overhead. But the real work is happening below. Beneath Capitol Hill, L'Enfant builds a massive underground vault. It will house not only vast sums of gold, funneled away from the treasury under Hamilton's careful watch, but also secrets. The vault is designed to collect and store sordid information about every member of the government, their illicit affairs and scandals they want to ensure never see the light of day. A few select positions in the treasury are created solely to oversee this process. These individuals, unaware of the full scope of their roles, carefully collect dirt on each member of the Senate and the Congress, and they send their findings through chutes that lead to the vault. They do not answer to any laws except collecting as much information as possible. Only Washington and Hamilton truly understand the scope of the system. At the beginning, the plan works quite well. John Adams is quietly pressured into peacefully letting Jefferson take power. Jefferson is subtly made to understand that he cannot kill Aaron Burr or replace him before the end of his first term. Everything is going perfectly. And then Hamilton gets into a duel with Aaron Burr, and Burr shoots him. And as he dies, collapsing to the ground in pain from the bullet lodged in his midsection and from the blood pouring out of him, he thinks, Well, I messed that up. He had always meant to choose a successor, someone to run the democracy after he and Washington were both gone. But he had been careless, assuming he had decades left to see the plan through. Now, the vault continues to accumulate secrets and wealth, but no one is left to manage it. L'Enfant knows he built something beneath DC, but he doesn't understand its purpose. New individuals are hired to collect the secrets and put them into a chute that goes to the vault, but no one truly understands who is going to use this information. The wide-held assumption among these spies is that the president will be able to see the information they are gathering, but they are mistaken. Decades pass. A civil war comes and goes. 2 world wars unfold, and America marches forward, oblivious to the vault's existence. There is no one secretly pulling the strings. The vault swallows the scandals of countless politicians, illicit affairs, closeted identities, and bizarre, embarrassing trivia. Warren G. Harding reportedly nicknamed his penis Mount Jerry. For over a century, the system functions in the shadows. The year is 1963, when all that starts to shift. The historian, Arthur M. Schlesinger Jr., is conducting research on past presidents to write a book that secures Kennedy's legacy. JFK has just been shot, and Schlesinger feels that this is what he can do for his old friend. And that is when he sees it for the very first time. He has found a copy of the US Constitution with a strange line of written code on the bottom. Schlesinger is intrigued, but has absolutely no idea what he is looking at. Intrigued but baffled, Schlesinger consults several colleagues to no avail. Eventually, an old friend, who happened to be a Freemason, suggests he look through the personal papers of every Masonic founding father. Schlesinger does so painstakingly, and still finds no clue as to what the markings are. He is ready to give up, assuming that there is nothing to the markings, when he sees a painting that depicts Hamilton as a Freemason. He knows it isn't true, that Hamilton never joined the order, but he decides to carefully look through his papers anyway. Buried deep within his personal files, on one of Hamilton's letters to Washington, he finds the code breaker on the back. The cracked code points to a location deep beneath Washington, D.C. Schlesinger goes to investigate and finds a door engraved with, "Those who stand for nothing will fall for anything." Inside is a vault overflowing with gold and a historical treasure trove of painstaking notes on nearly every politician to enter the Capitol since 1800. Schlesinger is thrilled to study the information inside, but wrestles with the ethics of the situation. He begins sneaking in nightly and taking notes in a cipher of his own creation. He quickly discovers that there is up-to-date information on modern politicians, including some very revealing photos of LBJ and his mistress Alice Marsh. At first, Schlesinger intends to do nothing with such information, but eventually realizes he has the potential to seriously alter US politics. He sends one of the worst photos to LBJ with the demand to pull out of Vietnam. 2 weeks later, LBJ announces out of the blue he has a plan to bring all American troops from Vietnam home. Every American leaves the country by May of 1964. The Vietnam War becomes a minor blip in American history. Schlesinger continues to use the vault to subtly influence American politics. Senators who used to be completely against the president's policies suddenly announce their support of LBJ's Civil Rights Act. Congressmen begin to panic as the noose tightens. At first, none of them want to admit that they are being blackmailed. Journalists notice a string of peculiar decisions from prominent politicians. Some who suddenly reverse long-standing stances, and others who abruptly retire from public office. A young investigative reporter from the Associated Press named Seymour Hersh begins to trace the strange trend. One night, while making his way to the vault, Schlesinger realizes he is being followed. He is not sure who has figured out what he is up to, but he understands he cannot let the vault fall into the wrong hands. Schlesinger begins to look over his shoulder. Hirsch has uncovered that Schlesinger has been seen near restricted sites late at night and begins to tie him to mysterious letters sent to key politicians. The next time Schlesinger sneaks into the vault, he brings a match and lights the documents on fire. Soon after, he is found and held by the Secret Service who had been trailing him, but they are unable to find any substantive evidence that he was involved in any crimes and are forced to let him go. He walks away from US politics and becomes one of the most famous historical fiction writers of his time. His books often bear little gritty and dark details that are considered to be cleverly thought up. Only a few master masons wonder. Eventually, a few congressmen come clean about the blackmailing, and there is a brief flurry of investigations in Congress. The spies buried in the Treasury Department are finally found, and the positions firmly ended. Even though LBJ swears up and down he had no idea about the spies, he is forced out of office anyway. And President Barry Goldwater begins to lead America down a very different path. The vault is still full of gold, but that is for another generation to discover. The Freemasons' attempt to influence America is over, the country free to move forward with no one secretly pulling the strings. Thanks for listening, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.